1 o'clock. Do you know where your committee is? I'm ready whenever you're ready. Are we ready?
I'm ready, Mr. Chair.
We are ready. Okay, we will begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. I would like to request a roll call, please.
Give me just one moment. I thought we were ready, but our camera has not turned on yet. There we go. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience. Fusco?
Aye.
Kamer?
Aye.
Connor? Aye. Boys?
Aye.
Hannah?
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Why, thank you. We do not have any public hearings this afternoon, so with that, short of any questions or concerns referencing the regular agenda, we'll move into the new list of legislation. And we have one item that is coming in under the new list of legislation, which is item number 2. And I'd like to respectfully request that our clerk, Sarah Biviano, please read that in.
Item number 2 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with the Greater Akron Chamber of Commerce to provide economic and neighborhood development, marketing, and promotional services for the purposes of job creation, investment, retention, and expansion of existing companies in the city of Akron and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Volman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members of committee and council, we're here before you today. Those who've been around for a bit know we do an annual contract with the Greater Akron Chamber every year to assist with our economic development activities within the city and the region. It is, among other things, they're very helpful with, our business retention and expansion, outreach meetings and the like. They organize those for us, as well as trade shows and other things throughout, not just the country, but the world. And that's what we're here in front of you for. It's the same amount as previous years.
Yes.
Of $160,000, and I have Mr. Steve Millard and Mr. Greg Kramer of the Greater Akron Chamber if you have questions about their work.
Yes, thank you. I understand there may be a presentation. If you'd like to come around this
yes,
side,
there is a presentation.
It may be easier. No, we have a short presentation. Welcome again. Welcome back.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you, Councilman Fusco. We do have a short presentation which is up on the screens. I believe you already received a copy of it. If you'd like hard copies, I have them as well. So just let me know if you should need that. But I wanted to just spend a little bit of time giving you a quick update on some of the work that we're doing, if that is helpful to you. We very much, first of all, appreciate the support of the City of Akron for the work we're doing. You are a key supporter for everything economic development that we do. And we list out a series of activities and programs that we're working on, but I thought I could give you a quick overview of some of that activity today. We can go to the next slide. So there are really 4 core entities at GAC that your support is benefiting. It's the work of Elevate Greater Akron, the work of the Greater Akron Chamber, our Polymer Industry Cluster, and Connexus NEO, which over the last couple of years has aligned more closely with the Chamber. You're probably familiar with all 4 of them.
He said he has them.
you
I'm
don't
sorry
have-
to interrupt you. I printed mine out from home. I got it.
Yep, there you go.
Does anyone else like a copy? Would anyone else?
Kyle, I've got a couple more.
Yeah, it's on the computer too. It's attached to legislation as well for anyone who's technically minded like myself.
Got more of it.
I have it.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, cool.
So
Thanks.
4 entities, as I mentioned. Elevate Greater Akron is that collaboration that was driven by the city, the county, the chamber, and the GAR Foundation a number of years ago, and has developed into a really strong collaborative among more than 15 or so economic development organizations. The Chamber, of course, the Polymer Cluster, which we talked a little bit about last week when we were with you in terms of the work that's happening there, and then Connexus NEO, which is a workforce intermediary in the region that a lot of key organizations are part of that board, including the city, and we focus on connecting the dots for the workforce ecosystem in the community as well. So all 4 of those organizations at some level are supported by the Chamber and through some of the work that we do with you guys. The next few pages talk about the Polymer Industry Cluster, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. We spent some time last week talking about this, so I can go deeper if you'd like, but I just kind of laid out for you the overall work of the industry cluster, and this is really to help drive success, growth, investment in that industry sector in our economy. And then the two big projects that we talked about last week, one of which we had asked for your support for the matching funds, both the Federal Tech Hub and the State Innovation Hub are laid out there, the specific projects and activities. So I'm happy to answer questions around those if you have them, but we've really looking at about $100 million coming into the community to support these projects and activities to advance the polymer cluster, with about 20 million of that 100 is matched locally, including the dollars that you all authorized to bring to that work.
And thank you for your work on helping achieve that. I know that you guys were very involved with that matching and making sure that we got that fundraised, if you will.
Yes.
So thank you for your efforts on that.
No, we appreciate your support as well for that. So if you go to maybe the sixth slide there, it talks about the BRE and attraction efforts. One of the biggest things that we do in conjunction with the city and other partners is get out there and talk to companies. We do about 300 meetings a year with companies across the region, including a large number of those meetings in the city of Akron. In every one of these meetings, we have representatives from all of our partners, including the city, to be in those discussions. We found them to be a really efficient way to connect with leadership at these companies. We'll typically have the CEO, the CFO, the marketing people, the HR people, and we'll have usually 10, 15 partners on that call as well. It's a video call, which is maybe one good thing COVID gave us was the ability to do these calls. But to get all those folks scheduled at the same time to talk about their business issues is important. And it really lets us understand what their needs are and make referrals. So one of the biggest projects or things that comes out of these meetings is referrals. I think we did close to 1,600 or so referrals last year from those meetings, where that means that we connect them with somebody who can help them with something important. Sometimes we surface projects, sometimes we surface unmet needs that they have. So they're really a nice opportunity. And there are a number of portfolios there from our largest companies to emerging companies and mid-sized companies, polymer companies, and then minority-owned and women-owned businesses is another portfolio that we service with that. So we had our BRE activities so far this year. I think we've done about 60 visits so far with MBE and WBE companies in the city. We had 8 projects that closed in the city. You see some of the job and investment numbers there. And then there's a Jobs Ohio small business grant that we work on accessing for companies when they're doing projects. They're specifically targeted to minority-owned, veteran-owned, or other businesses in distressed areas, and we were able to sort of land 5 of those this year for projects that are happening here in the city. There's some example projects there of activities that we're working on. We do a regular weekly debrief for all the system participants in BRE. Every week we sit down and talk about every lead, every opportunity, every issue, and really share information about that so we can effectively respond as a community to these business needs. And then finally, we do trips. We did 4 trips this past year so far to really focus on materials and manufacturing opportunities. These are places where we go to these large trade shows where we can connect with lots of prospects. I think those 4 shows that I identified there, about 100 plus appointments at those shows. These are formal appointments with companies that are specific prospects for work that we think we can really help them with in the city of Akron and Summit County and the region overall. And so often they turn into follow-up visits and follow-up opportunities for us to continue to court them for investment in the region. Questions about any of that?
Any questions? Yes.
Council.
Thank you. You mentioned minority-owned businesses.
Yes.
Where are these roundtable series held at?
We have them at the Greater Akron Chamber primarily. We sort of have a large event space there that we invite folks into. I think so far this year we've had about 170 folks attend those meetings. About, 70 of those were City of Akron residents. So we're really trying to outreach to any business that might need help and support. What we do in those meetings is we bring in resources like Bounce or the Development Finance Authority or the Urban League or others, and they present on what their services are and how they can help companies. And so people can ask questions and then find out how to follow up with support.
Good.
Yep.
Further questions or comments? Okay.
Mr.
Linda
Chair.
Mobian, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very, very much. And hi, Steve. It's nice to see you again.
Councilman.
When I saw the presentation, I noticed that Greater the Elevate Akron was like your first bullet or something on the second page. And what I was expecting to see, at least at this juncture, is some numbers in terms of how much money are we spending with these organizations? How many organizations have we helped? I see a lot of write up, and on page 6, I was noticing that you talk about. Um, I want to make sure I got my pages together here because I didn't number them.
And nor did I.
And nor did
Apologize.
I. Apologize. Yeah, but it's the one that has to do with um, the NEO. Um, I was trying to figure out who that was so I could give them a call and find out more about what you're doing there.
Might be
It's,
page 8 where we talk about the Northeast Ohio Equity Trust. Is that what you're referring to?
yes, is that yeah, I have it right here. Yeah, well, you're talking about participation there, and what exactly are these folks doing, and who are they,
Sure.
And and again, with regard to numbers and dollars, we talk about Elevate Akron and we talk about it a lot in terms of words, but I like to see dollars and I like to see how many organizations are we helping, and because from what I can see from this, I don't I can't determine if we really made progress or not. And I know we've been talking about this for years now. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit more and provide us with more figures and numbers, please?
Sure. And I might not have all the numbers you might want at the moment, but I can give you some sense of it. I think one of the things that when we're doing this work, there are a lot of players involved with it, and part of our job is to connect the dots among all of them to try to get the best effort that we can towards the work that we're doing. The Northeast Ohio Equity Trust is an interesting example of that. So one of the organizations that we are connected to and work closely with in our economic development work is Team NEO. I think you're all familiar with that organization. They're a Jobs Ohio affiliate in the region here. And they initiated a process of working with us, really actually a long list of stakeholders. There's probably 50 to 60 organizations that have been involved with this broader look at how are we all doing different activities in the area of equity and inclusion. How do we better align our efforts? What are some of the metrics that we could sort of use as common metrics for our progress? As you know, there are a lot of different people who are working in this space. And so the effort with the Equity Trust is to try to coordinate a little bit and connect the dots so we could share some of the best practices across the group. So we've participated in, I think, 3 or 4 large gatherings of that group. And the ultimate outcome of that work will be a set of metrics regionally, and a goal for some more aligned activity in a number of different areas of inclusion. There's no dollars that are sort of transmitting for that work, but it's really just being engaged. The support that we get from the city really helps us support and engage in a lot of this kind of different work in a very broad way. And then specifically in terms of some of the visits, as we talked about, we've got about 300 companies in our minority and women-owned business portfolio that we do visits with each year. There's probably, of those, a lot of those companies don't make the time for a visit, but I think so far this year we've had about 60 visits with those companies where we dive into what their issues are. We created the Greater Akron Business Navigator, which I think you're familiar with, but this is a resource that companies can come in and find out what help and support is available to them across the entire network of supporting organizations. So there are about 200 different support resources being offered by about 60 different organizations in Greater Akron that help and support small business. We've had about 7,000 visits to that resource on the web. The most frequent kinds of companies that come are companies that are in the growth mode or a sustainability mode. They're looking for grants, loans, access to capital, and networking opportunities. Most commonly, they're 1 to 4 employees or actually 0 employee companies looking for help. And the most common demographics are women-owned or minority-owned businesses using that tool. So it's a broad platform. Again, the idea of a small business support system, much like a healthcare system or a workforce system, it's not really a system at all, right? There's a whole bunch of different players out there. One of the things that we find is most helpful for the smaller businesses we work with is to point them to the right direction and help them connect the dots. There are organizations that do a lot of hands-on support, people like SCORE or the SBDC or the Urban League, And then this tool is more for kind of broad connecting the dots in terms of navigation for people to get access to the right kind of help that they need.
Can you provide us with a listing of these organizations? Because
Yes.
I still hear from people who are struggling with their businesses that there's no place to go. And for the most part, a lot of these organizations are looking for resources. And when I say resources, financial resources. And, to refer them to different places to get information is helpful, probably, but it doesn't give them what they need. I'm sure you've heard, and I would imagine you probably had some contact with Robert DeJohnette, and I know you know him very well.
Yes.
They have started the Black Chamber, and he is one that's in charge of that. Is there a way for us to partner with that group that could be more focused on this population? Because I see that, the Greater Chamber, you're really busy with a lot of bigger organizations. Is there a way for us to partner with them so that we can get some real clean cut results and numbers and how are we financially helping people? Because again, I think resources are good, but financial resources are better for many of these organizations that are struggling out there. And I don't know how well we're doing in that area. But when we keep talking about Elevate Akron, Greater Akron, that is still one of the areas that we struggle with, that they're not getting contact or access to the resources they need. And I know that the Black Chamber that is starting, that's going to be their total focus. So have you had contact with Robert, and are you aware of what they're trying to do?
Yeah, couple of responses to your series of questions. So I would invite you and the others on council to take a look at greaterakronbusinessnavigator.org. I think what you'll find there, and I can get you the list of resources, there's a lot of resource there, and there's a lot of resource specifically you can sort of tune in on financial help and support. That is the biggest thing that we see people needing. One of the big misnomers out there for a lot of business owners is they believe that there is, free money out there just for the asking. They want to get a grant, they want to get something to get their business going. Some of that does exist, but as you all know, in your own work in economic development, there are, job creation requirements around that. There's investment requirements around that, and very, very often people believe that they can get the money they need to start their business for free because it's just a good thing. And so what we try to do with the site is educate people on the resources that are there, the requirements of the resources, et cetera, and get them to talking to the people that they need help with. So the whole point of that resource is to narrow down the field of things out there to get exactly to what people might need help with. As it relates to the Black Chamber, Robert and I had a conversation. I think the week he launched, he reached out. We had an opportunity to talk a little bit, told me what he was working on and what he was doing. Asked him if we can be of help to sort of let us know how we can be of help. And I think the focus there has been they want to focus very much on the Black-owned businesses driving their own effort here. And so to the extent that we can be helpful, I'm happy to be helpful with that. Robert certainly knows the organization well. He worked in it for a couple of years, and he knows that we're here and available to assist. But there is a certain level, Councilwoman, of being careful that we don't overstep because folks want to sort of drive their own outcomes. And so, unfortunately, I've got a strong personality, and sometimes when I get in a room, people think I'm trying to sort of tell them what to do, and I don't want to do that. I want to be respectful and supportive and a resource. So if we can help, I think that'd be great, but we don't know yet exactly how we could be helpful to them other than donations, which is something that they're out looking for right now, so.
So are there organizations that you can point to that we have done more to help them since we've been focusing on Elevate Akron? I mean, if you could give us names and organizations
Sure.
that I can talk with, because I'm really trying to find out how are we being helpful, and if we've been as helpful as we think we are being, because we continue to give money to Bounce and to your organization and to others to help us with all kinds of groups of folks. And I just don't know. I see Elevate Akron as your first icon on the second page of your presentation, but I was really looking for more in terms of numbers and dollars and what have we really done to move the needle.
Yeah, so I think I'll try to think about a way to get you some additional information that you want, but I can give you a list of organizations that we work with and help. Like there's, for example, part of Elevate Greater Akron, we have a network of small business organizations called Spark, and that network is facilitated by Bounce as part of EGA. And there are probably 12 to 14 organizations around the table there who really are working together. One of the new things that they're going to be doing is bringing in individual entrepreneurs and trying to sort of group support them, if you will, with the specific issues that they have. And so there's, this work is, as you can imagine, it is hand-to-hand in some ways, right? You got to sit down and really work through it with entrepreneurs. Many entrepreneurs are not ready for the kinds of support and help that they need to get. And so it's painstaking. It takes a long time to work through with a lot of these companies with the issues that they need. So, more hands at this work is helpful, and we're really trying to facilitate the connection of all those folks to these different companies.
Well, I look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from anyone? I'm just looking around because you've already, I'm just checking, yeah. You're good to go. Or did you have something?
Are you still working through the presentation?
Whatever you guys want to do. You've got it there, so if I can take just random questions if you'd like, or whatever.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I'll get you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Millard, I noticed in the piece of legislation it mentioned neighborhood development in addition to economic development. Tell me
Yep.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think one of the areas that we're trying to do more is to connect some of our neighborhood development organizations into the work. But, the infrastructure for neighborhood development organizations in this community is not as strong as maybe it is in some other communities. We have had some opportunities to connect and support, like the Well, for example. CDC is involved with the work that's happening with the Spark ecosystem around food entrepreneurs, and to try to sort of help and connect some of those resources. So if we have people who are trying to start businesses in the food space, they would be a natural source of referral. We have had some engagement, a little bit of engagement with the north side folks, a little bit with some of their work as well. But the community development corporations, a little bit with Progressive CDC, but we haven't had huge engagement with them. There's probably more work we could do in that space.
Yes.
Just as a follow-up, what types of things would you see, like what types of connections would you like to make with those organizations?
I think just simply being able to help people understand they exist, the kind of services and work they provide. I mean, I think most of them are listed in the Business Navigator, so that people have access to that if they do a search for that kind of help and support, but really getting a better sense of what they need from us as well. When working with Progressive CDC and Pastor Nelson out there, one of the things that we did is piloted with him a little bit a membership structure where we could bring people in to our overall services at the chamber and gave them a pilot for it. I think one of the difficulties that we had with that is when it came time for those members to then sort of invest themselves into the work, they hadn't been connected well enough, or maybe they didn't quite, get the resources in a way that they decided to renew that. So we've tried different things with these different organizations, and some have been more successful than others.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hanna.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you think that your organization has helped the minority community, and what percentage of the minority community could you say succeeded in getting involved with your organization?
Well, as I said, in things like our small business roundtables, where we've got more than 50% of the participants are minority-owned businesses coming through, it's a forum for them to ask questions and get help and support. We don't have conclusive information about how many of our business members are minority-owned. It's self-reporting, and so not everybody will report that information to us about their minority status and their demographics. I do think that we have had good success engaging specific companies in our work. A lot of what we provide are services to those businesses, like the health insurance products and services, our 401k products and workers' comp. And so many of those folks have access to a benefit plan for their companies that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. When we went through, a number of years ago, going through the pandemic, right, there was a lot of focus on bringing in, identifying those companies and getting them relief grants. I think more than half of the grants we provided were to minority businesses in that process. So I think it's, we try every day to make sure we're making the connections with those companies, help them understand the resources that are available, and help to guide them to the help and support that exists.
Yeah. You've promised to provide us some numbers and some reports on the minority piece. There's an appetite here, of course. There is, absolutely.
Sure.
All of us are interested in that, as well as the Greater Akron Resource Network information, also looking for that piece as well.
Great.
I'm going to ask, is there any other questions or comments from anyone? I have a couple questions. So what is it that you hear on these visits? One of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest problems that the businesses have, the small business folks, as well as the large business folks?
So I think for our larger companies, it's all about really workforce. Workforce has been the single biggest thing they've been having difficulty with. How do I access workers? How do I sort of find the kind of talent that I need? I think a number of the issues, they're sort of small issues in terms of they've got specific questions about something that's going on in their neighborhood or their community, or can I get help with, there's city services sometimes that we get questions about. We get questions about what's going on with some of our, how we're going to attract talent sort of from a brand from the community. So beyond just looking for somebody for a job, what are we doing to attract more people to this region to try to have more workers? Because they feel like there's a dearth there. There are questions about how they can connect with our educational institutions for interns and those kinds of things, or getting the right kinds of training and education for their folks. We talked to a lot of companies about accessing resources through Tech Cred at the state of Ohio, which is a program that reimburses employers who want to train and upskill their employees. And a single employer can get as much as $30,000 every 2 months from the state of Ohio for reimbursing training expenses. So we talk about those kinds of things with them. For our smaller businesses, I think it's really about, usually about access to capital, about loans, about other kinds of debt resources that they may or may not qualify for, and networking. They want to connect with others and build relationships. So those are some of the kinds of things we hear.
Yeah, it seems like there was a presence back in the old days. Some of us remember them. And it was kind of on a regional basis. It would be like, and I don't know if they still exist, the North Akron, the North Akron Chamber, whatever, East Akron, whenever I first started, way back when, a lot of the East Akron business folks, they would just meet once a month and have dinner, but then again, they would talk about common type things that were going on in their community. And I know Kenmore, I believe, had one at one, you still do, yeah? Boards of Trade, yeah, the Boards of Trades, and I don't know how active they still are or not. Maybe looking at propping them up and trying to help them might be a way for that communication piece, and bringing in some city folks and others. That might be one method, but my concern is, and you hear this often, and I hear it from time to time from different business folks, is that workforce development piece. And I believe that's the county side. They have, I know, a whole department that's involved with that piece. And I was just curious, how do we rate? How are we doing on that? And what kind of jobs are we looking at for the future? And are we preparing our folks for those types of jobs? And the cry is still, and it was like this a couple of years back as well, in terms of workforce and having the people in position and in place, and that would be a job attraction too, especially moving into this the polymer age that we're living in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that our employers, like this workforce problem is a long-term problem, right? And demographically, it's not something we're going to beat in the short term. We've got, lots of retirements happening. We don't have as many folks coming into jobs. And we have, I think, just a general situation where we have more jobs than we have people available to fill them, which is a good place to be at one level. At the other level, when companies are looking to come here to the region and they can't readily see people who are on the sidelines looking for work, they question, can we really fill those needs? One of the things that we've looked at, like I'll take the polymer area, for example, we mentioned this a little bit last week. There are specific programs that we are putting in place that will allow us to reach into some communities where folks who are looking for opportunities at that next level. They might have an entry-level job today. Maybe they're making, $18, $19 an hour. How do we get them to a place where they can make $24, $25 an hour plus in jobs that require a little bit more maybe skill than what they currently have, but are very trainable, right? And so pre-apprenticeship programs, working with industry to sort of think about, okay, if they get this series of experiences, would you be willing to interview and potentially hire them? And so when we were down in Durham a few weeks ago, we took some leaders down there to take a look at what they'd done in their life sciences industry cluster. And one of the things that they had done with their community college, Durham Tech, is they created a series of requirements that all the companies agreed would be an important prerequisite to getting a job with one of their companies at a very basic production operations or entry-level position. We're moving down that same path on the polymers to say to the companies, okay, what skill sets do you need? What kind of training and exposure do folks need so that you'd be willing to interview them and hire them, and gathering commitments from companies to do that. And so that's an opportunity for us. We're working with Stark State on that, University of Akron and others. There are a couple Department of Economic Development Administration programs called Good Jobs Challenge, which is focused on quality jobs. And these are jobs that are paying a living wage, jobs that have an opportunity for advancement, and jobs that have benefits. And so the idea is, how do we attract people into these apprenticeship opportunities to get access to those kinds of jobs as well? So I think there's a variety of activities in that space, but for us, I believe a lot of it is upskilling the folks that we have in our community versus attracting people in. When we looked a few years ago at the open positions that we had and the number of people that we have on the sidelines, even if we had doubled the number of people we were attracting from out of area to Akron for jobs, we'd still only be getting to 10% of the demand. So the key really is, how do we upskill and train the people that we have in our community and equip them for the jobs that our employers are going to have as we go forward? And that's a big area of focus for all of us.
Yeah, and if there's any data or what have you with regards to that, if you could share that with council as well, I'm sure we'd all would welcome that. Is it, a follow-up question just simply is the are you seeing on the manufacturing side more so? Are we seeing any growth on that side of it, on the manufacturing piece, or is it more of the techie type thing that we're looking at?
I think it's across. I can provide some information for you that will show you specifically by industry and types of jobs.
Okay.
How many credentials are we creating in the region? And then how many new job openings are there each year? And it shows you very clearly where there are some gaps. And there's probably, we call those in-demand jobs. And so, for example, that Good Jobs Challenge program I talked to you about, there are 5 in-demand jobs that we're focusing on. And so, like, one of the most in-demand jobs that we have in the region, in the manufacturing sector right now, are basically maintenance technicians for manufacturing companies. So they've got machinery that runs, that they're relying on. It breaks down. They need people who can go in and fix those things. That's one of the single biggest gaps that we have in our community in the manufacturing sector for jobs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much. I see Linda Mobian's hand is up again. Linda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, is there a person on your staff that could pull together a meeting within a reasonable amount of time for anyone that's interested in learning more about what's happening in that minority group, just to kind of brainstorm as to what's actually happening, what do we need to do more of? When you talk about maintenance jobs, I'm assuming, since we're talking about a higher level of maybe tools or whatever, or machines that they have to maintain, that these are higher paying jobs than what you're talking about that we would have thought of a long time ago. I would hope, because I know that if we pull together all the CEOs of organizations in Akron, they wouldn't look much different than what they've looked like all over these years in terms of representation. But is there a person on your staff that could pull together a meeting rather quickly, just to brainstorm and see what's happening in that minority group?
And you'd like to sit with folks from the organizations that are working with some of these companies? Is that the request, Councilwoman?
That or people that some of these businesses that are reaching out and that are constantly, and I can come up with a list of folks who I talk to on a fairly regular basis and give you that information as well. But people that you are helping or have tried to help, and just so we can see what their needs are and are they feeling that we are listening and being helpful?
Yeah. Yep, I can work on that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Any further questions or comments? Okay. We'll go with Sharon first. She's not been heard
Good
from
afternoon.
just yet.
Thank you
Hi,
for your
Tina.
presentation. I'm curious of your 700 high school students that were in internships. Is there any follow-up with those students about that experience, pros and cons that maybe we can build on?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of evaluation they've done at the end of the internships, but I can find out for you on that. But yeah, I think that the expansion of that sort of work program and work experience program in the last couple of years has been very positively received. I think there's only way these students are going to get a sense of what it's like out there is to actually do the work. So I can find out a little bit more about that. Yep.
Tina Boyce.
I was just going to build on that. With Akron Public Schools having the college and career academies and doing credentialing during high school and preparing these kids for jobs straight out, like it feels like some of that gap could be filled even with our younger students that can transition into a well-paying job right after high school potentially. Yep. That was my one comment. But my second question was for you, Mr. Volman. I'm not familiar with the funds. Do you know what fund this is coming out of, the 24440?
Yes, and it's JED funds is the
Oh,
basic
gotcha.
answer to that.
Okay.
And it's part of our, in the annual budget, you'll see a column for other professional services under JED BRE funds, and
Gotcha.
that's where this comes from.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Further questions or comments? Very good. Not hearing any. I'm going to request that we place this on the consent agenda to give some time for the information to come back and that everyone can review that, and then we can vote on it next week. Actually, 2 weeks, because we're off next week. So, and if there's any questions or concerns, it can come off. But I think we should be okay with that. Any questions? One last final comment. I want to thank you and the Chamber, both of you gentlemen, for what you're doing here. In the past, what we've seen is legislation come in and no one even show up at times. But you guys are both here. For the most part, we do have someone, but you're here yourself as the head of the Chamber, and we certainly appreciate that. And all the effort that goes into just giving us a report like this, we appreciate it in your candor and all the work that you're doing right now. It seems like it truly is a partnership versus, perhaps in the past it's been just a little different, but we appreciate everything that you're doing.
Oh, you're very welcome. I mean, we value the partnership. You guys are a key supporter, and we're working every day with members of your team on the work that we do. So I look forward to continuing the dialogue. I wish we could solve all these things,
Right.
But all we can do every day is keep pushing towards them. So
Well, we're cheering for you to be successful, believe me.
Thank you.
With that, is there a recommendation for consent?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Very good, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that,
Before you adjourn, would the committee like to address the committee meeting minutes from last
thank
week?
you. Thank you for reminding me that. Is there a recommendation to approve the minutes of the previously held meeting? Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. The ayes have it. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Our next committee today will be the Public Service Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. Again, that's the Public Service Committee, and it will begin at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, it's 2:00, and our next committee of the day is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Kamer, McKittrick, DeShazier, Bolden, and Lombardo. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, I'd like to call the public service meeting to order, please. We did have a meeting last week. If we can get those minutes approved, please.
Motion to approve minutes from last week.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. We do have one piece in front of us today, and it's an ordinance ratifying the actions of the Director of Public Service in contracting with Cardinal Environmental for emergency services to restore residential basements after the August 2024 storm event and declare an emergency. And we have our Service Director, Chris Little, with us. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I don't need to remind any of you, but on August 8th, we had a severe storm that swept through our city, but mostly the west side of Akron and in the Merriman Valley. So what happened with this storm, it overtaxed our sewers, but it also caused extensive flooding of streets in the surrounding area. So our rain gauges in these areas were between 200 and a 500 plus year storm. Obviously our sewers are not rated to handle that when they were designed, whether it's, as recent as 10 years ago or 100 years ago. They're not designed to handle this type of storm. So resulted in overtaxing our sewer system. A lot of these homes in this area did receive water in their basements, as we should say. So as in the past, as we've done for years, we responded to calls, and we received just under 300 calls from residents that were hit or experienced a backup in their basement. So as we have done in the past, we've hired contractors to go out and first of all, sewer maintenance investigated all these calls, followed up, which resulted in the contractor having to clean about 135 of these basements. Some of the basements that we received calls on, we prioritized in the order they came in. The contractor had between sometimes up to 8 crews, and some of these crews, they had to put in 6 or 8 personnel because there were so many items in the basement. So we worked with the homeowners on what they wanted to keep and what they did not want to keep. The things that they did not keep were removed from their basement, and then our sanitation crews picked up these items and they were disposed of. So it took quite a while to do all this cleanup. We just received the invoice after we audited it just recently, so that's why we're bringing this to you. Sewer maintenance alone had over 200 hours of overtime following up on these calls, and this doesn't include all the cleanup we did in the valley with street cleaning and our parks maintenance. Those are not even in here, but this is just to pay the contractor for the services they perform. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments? Any other? Councilman Lombardo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say, Mr. Little, you said it took a lot of time. I mean, let's just say if it's November 8th, I mean, that sounds very good to me, that all the people, doing their, specific part in this project. I think the city should be commended for all this because it was, like you said, a once in a 100-year storm, whatever. So I just had a question though. Are you saying that all these people that cleaned out about 300 houses?
Correct.
And the basements and everything, and
Yep.
and then special pickups for delivering it to
Yeah, so basically,
like the bulk pickup.
we started with all the items that they didn't want to keep and removed. The water receded itself, obviously. We didn't have to pump any water out. As the storm receded, the sewers receded, and then the water drained back down through, but that left a mess of silt. And, so these basements were cleaned and then sanitized for the homeowners.
Wow. Well, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? Councilman?
How many businesses were out there that you have to work with too? I know that, and I commend you for getting to as many places as you got to in that short period of time.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, your crews were there or somebody was scheduled to be there or had been there. But how many businesses were out there that you knew of that you had to actually go in and help them?
Not very many, because they wanted to get up and running right away. I think most of them either did it themselves or they called their insurance company to get help. We concentrated on the residents and getting their homes back to where they could occupy their home, if they were moved out. I mean, most of them stayed, but we tried to get those done first. So not very many at all.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Bolden.
Just want to say thank you, Mr. Little and the Service Department and all those that came out. I know wards 4 and 8 got hit really, really hard, and it was insane. I mean, it was. And the next day down in the valley, and you know what you've done in people's residences and helping them, what we've done as a city and prioritizing that, and then helping the businesses down in the valley after seeing the nightmare that was down there for them, and just making sure the parking lots were clean so people could get back into business. Those people do appreciate what you do, and I know as a council person for what you've done and jumped on this stuff and really took care of the city. And the way you do every day, though, and this is just proves that what you do every day is direly important to the city, and we appreciate everything you do. Wanted to make sure you hear that.
Thank you. We'll pass that on to our employees.
Thank you for the comments. Councilwoman Davis?
You're still muted.
Chris and his team for the great work that they did over here in Ward 4, because we really got hit hard. I had the opportunity to drive around to some of the houses, and the work that these guys had to put in was just amazing. So I appreciate everything that you all did. I did go over to the service center over on Peninsula Road and thank those employees over there. And again, you guys did a great job, and we really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any. Is Chris's consent agenda okay on this one?
Yes, sir, that's fine.
Okay. Committee, any recommendations?
Yeah, motion for consent.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. That's the only piece we have in front of us today. We are adjourned.
Our next committee today will be the Public Safety Committee, and it will begin at 2:15. Those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hannah, and Davis. Again, that's the Public Safety Committee, and it will begin at 2:15. Thank you. Okay, it's 2:15, and our next committee of the day is the Public Safety Committee. Those committee members are McKittrick, Kamer, Lombardo, Hannah, and Davis. We do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Viviano. I'd like to call public safety to order. If I could get a motion to accept our meeting minutes from the previous meeting.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a piece that we took time on before. I'll read it again. It's authorizing the mayor as a designee to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with Faber Specialty Vehicles for the purchase of mobile command vehicle and declaring an emergency. We had some good questions asked the last time. Wanted to take some time so all committee members and any council members might have any other questions. Mr. Nacco is going to give a little update, I think, on what's going on with the vehicle that's coming through for us to be able to look at today. Go ahead.
So I reached out to the manufacturer, Farber, to ask them if we could get a look at a demo vehicle. And the timing was right. They have a vehicle that is very similar to the one that we are proposing that they just finished, and they're bringing it up today. It'll be up here approximately 5 o'clock, and they're gonna park it right out front here in front of the municipal building and let folks come walk through it, ask questions about it. We'll keep it here up until whenever you're done. I know you have some training from 4 to 5 or 4 to 6, but maybe if you don't get a break when the training is over before council starts, if you could come down and take a look at it, I'd appreciate it. It's very similar to the one that Akron is asking them to build or proposing that they build, just with some I guess there's minor differences on the interior, but every vehicle that they build is custom. It's from the ground up. So it'd be a great opportunity to kind of, a picture's worth 1,000 words, as they say, and I think that would be a great descriptor for you just to see it and give eyes to what we're talking about here. A couple of other things that I don't know if I mentioned before, but the group that we are proposing build this is they are part of a consortium that tries to give us the best price on any government type of contract. So that was one of the things that I don't believe I mentioned it before, but I did want to have it considered as well. You know, there was a lot of concern about the costs and how those costs would be handled. And in all likelihood, we see the first half, the manufacturer requires half down at the time of purchase order. In all reality, I would not expect a purchase order to be developed and ready until January or so, and then they would require half down. The half would be spread across the 3 divisions: public service, fire, and police. And then the other half would be required upon delivery, which probably would not be until 2026 if it's a 1.5-year build. So that, I don't know if that helps with the budget concerns or where the money is coming from or when it's coming, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you. And that's all for me, unless you have questions.
I do have one thing I'd like you to just to briefly go over. I know that I don't want everybody to think that I'm totally against this. I'm not. I feel that the positives outweigh the negatives, but I do look at things to try to be fiscally responsible, especially when it comes to the issue for money, because that was created because of the need was so great for it. But you had mentioned, you talked about, I had to ask specifically about grants. Could you touch on that for just a moment?
Yes, early in the process, when we started down the road looking at this vehicle and for grants that were available to fund it, only one came up, which is the Homeland Security Grant. We applied for that grant earlier this year. It is a very long process. We will not find out who is awarded that grant until mid to late next year, and then awards won't be coming out anytime next year until closer to the end of the year. If we were so fortunate to receive part of the grant, the anticipated amount would be about $150,000 that we might receive as an award, but there's no guarantee of that. If we were to receive that grant award, we would still have to look at what strings are attached to it and whether we would choose to accept that or not. But that is something that we have considered. We did apply for it. We don't know if we're going to receive it or not, but it should be something that considered as well. And we would apply that towards the second half of the purchase if we did receive it and if we did choose to accept it.
Okay, thanks for that information. We have any questions from any committee members? Any council members? Linda Mobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I did have an opportunity to talk with Mr. Nico, and he answered my questions. And as you stated, I'm not opposed to this. I think, it probably could be useful. My only real concern is that when we prioritize the needs for these dollars, he indicates that is in the budget for 2025. But I just would like for someone to tell me about some of the other things that we've been looking at for these departments, particularly the police department. I know that we've been asking for, body-worn cameras for everybody, and we've been asking for trainings for a long time. So I don't want to assume that this will take away from those things, but I just want us to make sure we're prioritizing our needs. And when I think about 650,000, he did inform me that it comes completely outfitted, because I was thinking that was 650 plus the other, cameras and table and all the other things. But Mr. Nacco indicated that the van comes with most of the equipment. A few things would have to be added. The other question I had too was when we purchased this SWAT, this huge machinery for the SWAT team, which I certainly don't want it used that much because it indicates we have a serious emergency. But that was a pretty expensive piece of equipment as well, and I'm not sure how much we use that. And I was thinking about the use of this command center, and if there was any other backup way to do what we need to do without purchasing this outfit. But I just want you to know that I still have some concerns. I haven't quite decided yet, but I did talk with Mr. Necco, and he did answer the questions I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Thanks. Councilman Fusco?
Thank you. This is, and I don't have the legislation in front of me, I left it over there. But this is primarily a safety vehicle, right? Safety?
Yes, that'll be its primary purpose.
Yeah.
It would have other purposes as well. It would represent Akron very well in any of our community events that, that we would hold. But its primary purpose is for public safety.
Yeah, I personally believe that, and I haven't yet decided which way to go on this. I understand there could be a need at certain times, periodically throughout the year, but me personally, I think in terms of public service and all the cuts they've experienced over the years, and all they've been flatlined for so long, and public safety has always, we've made sure they've maintained that level when service actually kind of went down a bit from time to time. Me personally, I could probably support this. I could probably get to yes a lot easier if it would just be a safety thing. Funding coming just from safety versus asking or telling or asking, whatever the case is, in terms of service kicking in. Because if I understand the funding formula, there's like 2, 2, and 2. Is that right, or am I off?
That would be some questions better off given to finance. We have decided, but it was decided that it was going to come from all three.
Yeah, that's for you guys, but we're the ones who pass the legislation, and we could probably put in the legislation what that formula looks like, I would guess, but I'm not, there's nobody here from finance who can answer this. And maybe we could try to get that answer, before we would actually take a vote on it, but I think that makes a little more sense, because we have so many needs on the service side. And so I'm willing to talk to anyone from the finance piece about that. Thank you.
Councilman Bolden.
Not on the committee, but just have a couple questions, and I don't know, because I listened to this last week, and I don't remember, and maybe I'm missing it in the legislation. Capital or operating budget expenditure on this?
Augie, could you answer that?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it a capital or operating budget? Where's this money coming out of? The capital or the operating budget?
As far as the vehicle, it's coming out of capital.
Okay.
Or it's treated as such through the issue 4 bucket.
Okay, so it'll be coming out of the capital budget. The other question, and no one is here from finance, and I just thought of this, to me, this is something that we obviously could use in emergency situations. As far as something that we drive in a parade, it doesn't do much for me, to be honest. I also look at trying to be very fiscally conservative here. We have now a $1.2 million item on the budget, and I don't know whether that we're in reimburse the legal agreement for the Walker family that we're going to be spending this year and for the next 4 years, and this is roughly half of that. I don't know whether that comes out of the capital or the operating budget, but that's going to happen. So we're going to we've got 1.2 million this year and 1.2 million for the next 3 years. This would cover half of that. And maybe we wait on that and make sure we cover those payments before we buy the shiny new truck.
I don't see this as being a parade vehicle, but I do see it as being something that's present during community events. More of a static vehicle at many community events. It gives a sense of public safety to folks that see that across the side, and it's a staging location for the safety forces, in the event that anything should happen, they're poised and ready to go. And in particularly, we have just this year alone, we've had 10 pretty good size events that we would have staged something like that at. I'm talking things like marathons, Pride Fest, 4th of July, all these things, you start looking at them, and the crowds and the amount of potential that is there is something that gives us concern. And we usually are set up in some type of ad hoc location, here and there, here and about. Sometimes we'll actually borrow a building to put ourselves underneath a roof. That's difficult, it's haphazard, and it's really not the practice that we want to do. We're trying to take ourselves into the 21st century with this type of setting.
Okay, thank you. I would like to know, and it's it's something that I could reach out to budget right after this, to finance, of where the money is coming out of for the Walker family payments. Is it capital or operating? And that's kind of important to know for me.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilwoman Amobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I recall correctly, last week when we talked about this, weren't we talking about the levy dollars that are pretty restricted to certain, I know it's restricted to police, fire, and roads. So I was thinking it was those dollars we were talking about, which we cannot use, we can use for this if we put it under, however we finagle it. If it's safety, then certainly it probably could be, I guess. But I thought it was those levy dollars we were talking about, and those are restricted dollars. Am I correct?
Yes,
And
issue four,
issue
yes.
4, yes. Yeah, and the other question I raised with Mr. Neko was, is there anything else? Do we have any other vehicles that could be used as stage, a command center? I mean, do we have any vehicles available that we could do that wouldn't be as clearly outfitted as this particular one sounds like it will be, but is there anything we could use as a backup?
Not in our opinion. There is no feasible, doable, good solution to that. We've tried things like using metro buses as just kind of an ad hoc type thing where we will call it and we'll collect our folks there under, within that controlled environment. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not. And we are at the mercy of another entity when we do something like that. We want to be in control of this. We want to own it, have it be a City of Akron resource that's there when we need it, where we need it.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Councilman Fusco, do you have something else?
Yeah, thank you. And always willing to talk and discuss, different funding mechanisms here. But if I understand this correctly, last week we heard that it's coming out of issue 4 and it's going to be shared by service, fire, and police. Well, if I remember issue 4 correctly, that piece of it is for roads. So that's $200,000 less of roads that we're going to be able to do next year. For me, that's kind of like the bottom line. And that's kind of like why I mentioned that. It's like, I don't see any point in taking it out of there. We still have a lot of work ahead of us on that piece of it. So that's one of my concerns.
Thanks, Councilman. Any other? Councilman Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm the only one that's going to really speak out in favor of this vehicle because I saw the confusion on Rosemary Boulevard, which was in Ward 5. And the police was in one place and the fire department was in another place. And they were like sending birds with notes to each other. So I think this command center would help alleviate that. And it's, I think you're talking about the expense, and something is going to happen in the future. It's not if or when, it's going to happen. And this vehicle would be an addition to the safety forces and the communication that they have between each other. So I'm going to be in favor of it once the finance department speaks to the concerns and needs of my fellow council people.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Lombardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this. And I hear what Mr. Fusco is saying about it's possibly taking road money away. I mean, the roads are going to be there for a long time. And I remember I asked the question to former Mayor Dan Horgan, when all the roads are done, what happens next? Start over again. And I feel like I said, the roads are always going to need paved, but there's got to be a way with spreading out costs. And again, I'm sure we'll have our finance committee here, finance director here in the future, but there's got to be a way where we could, spread our dollars out to get this thing paid for. Hopefully the grant comes through. It's a one-time grant, right? It's not every year. So, that helps. And there's, just like running a household, I mean, there's gonna be things that come up that, before weren't a priority, but, now we see the need for such items, and you gotta make room for it somehow, some way. So that's what I'm looking forward to hearing, but I'm definitely in favor of this mobile command vehicle. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. You have something?
I did.
Councilwoman Connor.
I just want to say, I'm not against the vehicle, but how do you go back to residents and say, the money you gave us for roads, and we all know that roads are a big problem, and we all get many calls on them. How do you go to them and say, well, you gave us this money for roads, and now we're going to use it for a safety vehicle? That's a hard one to swallow on this end. I believe police and fire deserve the vehicle, but it's very hard to go back to residents and have them support one thing and now move those dollars to something else.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Tina Boyce.
Thank you, appreciate it. Since we're all going around the room, I figured I'd chime in. I have been told I have the worst concrete road in Akron. Manchester Road, I've had no less than 15, 20 conversations with people about the fact that Manchester Road is just too expensive to get done. And other roads get paved and other concrete roads get fixed, but Manchester Road is like driving in I don't know, it's on the moon, basically. People have lost tires. People have had auto repairs that the city won't pay for. I, too, am supportive of something like this, but I gotta say, until I see all of the roads, you mentioned, Mr. Lombardo, the roads will always be there. Some roads are always there and not being fixed. So I would just like to advocate on behalf of my residents that, yes, this would be a lot easier to vote for if I knew something like Manchester Road were to be fixed next year. And Issue 4 money was meant for that specific purpose. So I just want to chime in and say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other council members or committee members? My intention was I wanted to bring this out of committee and have a vote on it this evening. If it would be nice if we would be able to get some type of input from finance in regard to the discussions we've had. Do we have any motions from the committee?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for time.
Further time?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion for time and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, we're at juncture. We're gonna be taking more time here on this. Hopefully we can get some input from finance in regard to this. I would like to go forward sooner than later because we are off next Monday. So hopefully we can expedite this and get some answers that people on council, my colleagues, gives them a little bit of idea where they want to vote with it. So, Mr. Fusco.
If I could, and we're supposed to see it, right, this afternoon. It's going to be here, so I think that's prudent to take time, and you could even call it temporary time if you'd like, Mr. Chair.
Pull the committee.
Yeah, you could pull the committee this evening and ask for a vote then. So that's one option, but
Okay.
I think it prudent though for everyone at least to put eyes on it before they would vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, we voted for time. Thank you so much for coming in and giving us your time today. We've got some new pieces coming before us today. The first one is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts without publicly advertising for bids with Axon Enterprises, Inc. for body-worn camera equipment, licensing, and other related services for officers in the Special Weapons and Tactics, the Street Narcotics Unit, and SNUD units, and declaring an emergency. Captain McCosey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is a 3-year contract with Axon. This is something we've been working on for quite some time to outfit our SWAT team members and our SNUD unit, members of our SNUD unit, with body-worn cameras. This would be for 42 cameras. The contract would start this year and extend for 3 years. I'll be happy to answer any questions on that if you like.
Thanks, Captain. Any questions about this from any committee members or any council members? I know we just heard Councilwoman Amobian talking about cameras and things of that nature, so I'm sure this is something that she'd be interested in. I don't know if she's no longer with us on Zoom, but yeah, this is, I'm sure this is something that's really important here for us. Councilman Lombardo.
Thank you. Captain McCosey.
Yes, sir.
So this is for 40. It's 3 years, 122. At the end, because it's for the equipment, licensing, and other related. At the end of 3 years, would possibly another 3-year contract be needed, but it would be less because those cameras last how long?
So the way this contract works, we actually get upgraded equipment every so often.
Oh, okay.
What this will do, and the reason why it's a 3-year contract, is that this will bring this contract in line time-wise with our other body-worn camera contract.
Okay.
And then as those contracts expire and we combine them into one, it simplifies matters from a finance
Right.
standpoint, and all those cameras are managed as one group.
Makes sense.
They are refreshed every so often, so as Axon comes out with newer, better technology, we get new cameras. And that's right about the time when the cameras start getting a little beat up and they need replaced anyway. We're going through that right now. In fact, some of the cameras are being replaced as we speak. So this will be the latest version of the technology that these officers will be outfitted with.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of a stupid question or statement, like, this laptop, right? I mean, someone could say, well, they last, 5, 6, 7 years. Well, technology, is upgraded like every year. But in general, I guess, for all these cameras, let's say the whole department was outfitted with them, does it seem to have a life of 3, 4, 5 years?
That's correct. It's about 3 to 5 years. And as part of the contract that we entered into with Axon, it's set up that way so that they're automatically refreshed to the new technology. So that's part of what we're paying for, is make sure that we're on the top end of the technology, rather than depending on buying all the cameras and owning them ourselves and then it being on the hook to pay for all that. So in the long run, the financial analysis shows that we're better off to do it this way, and that way we're not coming back to council for bigger and bigger chunks of money to replace technology that we could be rolling at a lower cost.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments from any committee members or council members? What's your pleasure on this?
We would ask for suspension on this so we can move forward with the contract.
Okay.
I'll make that motion to suspend the rules with
We have a
the favorable
motion.
report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll get that out before council tonight. We have another piece coming before us, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts for the purchase of police firearm replacements and declaring an emergency. And this is like a second piece to something we voted on previously.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we went through a previous set of the phase 1 of the program started this year. So we came through right at the beginning of 2024 in January to get the first purchase made. These are for next year, so it's going to take some time. The lead time on delivery is getting a little bit longer, so we're trying to stay ahead of it. We would expect delivery of these sometime May, June of next year, and that would allow us to finish out the transition for the rest of our officers. So this will cover the non-patrol officers, detectives, community relations, traffic bureau. We took care of the uniformed officers that work the cars this year. This is the rest.
Okay, thank you for that information. Have any questions from any committee members? Any council members? There was a question that was posed earlier. When our officers turn the guns in, what happens to them?
That's a very good question. What we do is we trade them in to the vendor. In either case, any of the vendors that we use, they give you a trade-in credit for it. So that comes off the cost of the new ones. We really don't have space or inclination to hold on to extras. Not good. So we do those through a credit system. This saves us a lot of money on the project overall.
Okay, thanks for that information. What's your pleasure?
Consent is fine on this.
Can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll get that on consent agenda. There's nothing further to come before public safety. We will be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final committee of the day is the Budget and Finance Committee. It will begin at 3 o'clock. Those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. Again, that's the Budget and Finance Committee, and it will begin at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, it's 3:00, and our next committee of the day is the Budget and Finance Committee. Those committee members are Lombardo, Amobian, Fusco, Boyes, and Bolden. We have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Clerk Bibiano. We had a meeting last week, so I'd like to get approval of last week's meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. We have one piece coming before us, and that is an ordinance providing for the temporary appropriation for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Akron for the period of January 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency. We have our Mr. Ficker here.
Thank you, Mr.
Floor is
Chairman.
yours.
So this is our annual temporary appropriation, and this is for 2025. So this is something that we bring annually, and it allows us to operate in the first quarter of next year until we pass our final 2025 appropriation. So this ordinance will be in effect until such time as the final is passed, and then this ordinance will lapse, and it will essentially be replaced by the final appropriation for next year. The amounts in here are identical to what was in our 2024 final operating budget. So if you look at it, there was not really any additional work that went into this. We simply copied our 2024 budget and are using it for this. And as I said, this will lapse upon passage of our final budget next year.
Okay. Does there come a point in time where we, would like to do our next year's budget like around October, November, or that's just not the way it works? You need to do this now and, again in February, March.
I think we are going to try to do a little bit earlier next year, but it is still going to continue into the new year. So part of it is just the timing of finances availability to, present next year's budget as well as close out, the current fiscal year, which is, we're quite busy with late in the year. So,
and
as I said,
vacations, and we're not here. And
we are going to try to do it. I think the goal is to present actually in February this year as opposed to March. So hopefully it'll be about 3 weeks maybe ahead of where we were last year. We're still kind of working out the final details on that, but we do expect to be a little bit ahead of where we were last year.
Okay. So again, this is just an annual thing because we are here in November, and you need approvals for things that happen in January and February, and we didn't do our budget yet.
Correct.
March.
Yeah.
So I got you. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from committee members?
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Amobian.
Another question came up, and I know it's not included in this, but where would the funds to settle a lawsuit? Is that in the legal department, and when will we approve that as councilpersons?
So there will be a component of it that is included in our amended budget for this year. There are 4 disbursements as part of that settlement, one of which will be paid this year. The 3 future ones will be appropriated in 25, 26, and 27.
Okay. Thank you. But the line item is...
Yeah, wasn't that the question?
The category is legal?
It will be, it will be in, as far as council is concerned, it will be in the other category. We do have a line item for claims and judgments. It will be under that line item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think consent is fine for this. Yeah. Okay. All right. Suspension of the rules. You talked me into it.
Can I get a motion? Second. There's a motion for suspension of the rules. And
I'm sorry, Mr. Fusco, did you make that motion? I didn't hear. Thank you.
Seconded by Councilwoman Amobian. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Suspension of the rules it will be. We'll report on that tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you do in the Finance Department. No other business coming before us. This Budget and Finance meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
That is the final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet in regular session at 6:30. Thank you.